Welcome to Web Handling. My name is Dave Roysum. In this clip, we will review 3 possible causes for a bubble behind a nib. The focus will be on the specific type that is caused by air. I hesitate covering this defect for 2 reasons. First is that air-induced ballooning is not all that common. Second is that air-induced ballooning is complicated of both mechanics and remedy. You may wish to pause or even replay some of the slides to study the details. Still, while ballooning is rare, it can be debilitating for some who wish to run at higher speeds. Also, for everyone, we will review a bit of basic web handling and winding. I know your time is precious, so let's get started. We first need to review air entrainment between a web and a roller. This bit of physics has been known in chapter-length detail for some 35 years now. It is well covered in my award-winning and trademarked Web 101 class, as well as in the Web Handling Handbook, as well in dozens of other publications. All we need to do here is to remind the viewer that air is pumped onto the web at higher speeds. The perhaps new bit for some is that nearly identical mechanics happen during winding. In this case, the air is pumped between the web and a wound roll instead of a roller. While there are differences in detail, the concept is identical, and that is all we need to do to get started here. One outcome of air entrainment into a winding roll is that it can sometimes cause air to inflate the outer layers because the air entrained into the roll can't get by the nib. In this case, the nib acts something like a leaky dam where some amount of the air gets left behind. This air can then accumulate and inflate the layers very much like a balloon, hence its name. However, we have to be super duper careful because merely the presence of a bubble behind a nib does not mean it was caused by air. A bubble behind a nib can be caused by other mechanisms, and the air merely goes along for the ride, filling in the places where there is a void for other reasons that we will list shortly. So, how can you answer the question of whether the air caused the bubble or the air is merely going along for the ride and has no part in either cause, effect, or remedy? Simple. Run at 2 very different speeds, such as half speed and full speed, and then compare the difference in frequency and or severity of ballooning. If this or any other defect is not speed dependent, then air is not involved in the formation. For this roughly similar appearance, the so-called bubble could be caused by a baggy web or by an uneven nib, as we covered in our Web 101 class. The good web handler first turns to the knobs that might affect a mechanism, in this case, nib. A case might be made to increase the nib so as to keep more air out of the roll. But then any air that does get in will be more readily trapped behind the nib. A case could also be made to decrease the nib so as to not trap the air behind the dam made by the nib. But then you would let more air into the roll in the first place. So the next step is to do an honest trial to see whether a low or a high nip is better. But don't expect that that problem will necessarily go away entirely. Finally, if you are desperate, you might momentarily lift the lay-on roll or stop and lance the bubble, something like popping a blister. However, both of these desperate moves are, well, violent and desperate. Both the film and the paper industries independently found a major remedy. The film people call the nip roller grooving a burping groove, and the paper winding people call their version a wide, shallow groove. These are usually trialed by tape in order to get the geometries right before cutting the pattern into a roller permanently. There's more on this subject in other references I will give you shortly, so we don't need to detail that here. No matter which version of the groove you use, the mechanics are identical. The shallow groove allows air to vent by the nip at that grooving and thus doesn't get trapped. This is shown in the schematic, which you may want to pause and study. While much has been written on air entrainment, very little has been written on this specific problem of air-induced ballooning. There are other references that we could go into more detail on the special grooving used for this special purpose. The first mention in publications was my paper in 2009. However, I also have 2 clips on this subject on this all web handling channel of YouTube. Thank you so very much for joining me in this defect solving and defect preventing series. Stay tuned for next week's show, where we will talk about another rare but troublesome defect, and that is the crepe wrinkle. If you have a defect you would like to hear about, let me know in the comment section below. If you found anything interesting or useful here, please like and share and subscribe. See you next time.